So I've been waiting for this shoe for almost a year since I saw it at the US Olympic Marathon Trials. Unlike most Hokas, this shoe looks small compared to some of those thick carbon-plated racers we see from different companies nowadays, but Hoka managed to squeeze a cushioned, soft, light and bouncy package into this shoe, and after doing various runs at various paces, adding up to close to 100 miles, I'm ready to give you my full review. So throughout this review, I'll be using the Stoplight reviewing method. So if it's a green light, that means there are a ton of pros and very few, if any, cons. If it's a yellow light, that means there's about equal amounts of pluses and minuses. Then if it's a red light, that means that there are more negatives than there are positives. I did buy this shoe with my own money, so just like all my reviews, my opinions are my own. But with all of that out of the way, let's finally get into it. Let's start with the upper. The Rocket X fit like a slipper where the heel never slipped, and I had enough room even when my feet swelled on hot, long runs. However, I did feel like I had to crank the laces to get it to hug my midfoot nice and tight. I do have narrower feet, so this might be better for people with wider feet, but since I had to crank down the laces, it meant I was left with a ton of extra laces flopping around. I feel like Hoka probably could have used slightly shorter laces. The lightly padded ankle collar and tongue, along with the flexible mesh, was very comfortable, and I never got any hot spots or rubbing. The mesh that it uses is a simple engineered mesh that is decently thin and decently breathable. Even when running in the cold, it wasn't too drafty, and so that's a nice bonus as well. Alright, now let's move down to the midsole. The Rocket X has a stack height of 30mm in the heel and 25 in the forefoot. It uses a compression molded EVA and makes it feel very marshmallow-like. While there are other carbon-plated racers with higher stack heights, there's still plenty of cushion here. Along with the CM EVA, there is a full-length carbon plate that sits close to the outsole. Some refer to this as being bottom-loaded. Anyways, I thought that this carbon plate definitely helped with the pop when I was picking up the paces, but with how soft the foam is, it isn't the most responsive combination, especially compared to something like the Endorphin Pro that's a little bit firmer. For the overall ride though, I thought that the CM EVA was nice and soft and made it a little bouncy, which I really liked. The carbon plate helped stabilize it, and like I mentioned, adds a little extra pop to it. While it wasn't a trampoline like ZoomX, I think it's the closest Hoka has gotten to a super shoe. So far the midsole has been holding up well. I feel like it's gotten a little softer even, which I personally like, but I wouldn't expect to get 500 miles out of the midsole with it still feeling super lively. I know the carbon plate will help with longevity, but I think around 300 miles is pretty realistic. Alright, now let's talk about the outsole. The outsole is made up of thin patches of rubber in the forefoot and the heel. After about 100 miles, they're still holding up decently, but I definitely don't see them lasting over 500 miles. The rubber on this shoe is good for gripping on the road, and that's probably about it. It's definitely better than having just exposed foam. I'm glad they did put some rubber on it, but it's definitely racing flat style rubber, and it's not something thicker and grippier that you'd find on an everyday trainer workhorse. The Rocket X is lightweight at 7.4 ounces, and this helps make it seem really easy to pick up the pace and is on par with a lot of other carbon-plated racers. Alright, now on to the run type stoplight portion of my review, where we go through speed day, everyday, long run day, and recovery day. Starting with speed day, the Hoka Rocket X gets a green light. So when the Hoka Rocket X debuted at the Olympic Marathon Trials, it proved that it was made for speed. So right when I got these shoes, I raced a virtual 5K, and I thought for that distance it was a little too soft, a little too spongy feeling, but racing half marathon or full marathon distances, this felt fantastic and exactly what I was looking for. So the cushion helped my legs feel fresh, and the bouncy foam with the carbon plate helped make it feel a little more energetic. And honestly, these have been my go-to shoe for speed days as of late. For every day, the Rocket X gets a yellow light. So like I've mentioned, the Rocket X is very comfortable and very bouncy, and I actually enjoyed using them as an everyday trainer when I wanted to pick up the pace a little bit. But this shoe is not designed as an everyday trainer, so the durability is definitely not there, and it would get worn down really quick if you did use it just for everyday mileage and your races and your speed days. Plus, it does have a carbon plate that makes it a little more rigid, and I'm personally not the biggest fan of doing every single run every single day with a carbon plated shoe. For a long run day, the Rocket X gets another yellow light. So after doing long runs in these shoes, my feet definitely felt happy, but I think they felt the best when I was doing some long progression runs at marathon efforts or a type of run like that. But for just your average endurance building run, I'd prefer something a little less speedy and a little more plush. In recovery days, the Rocket X gets a red light. So for recovery days, I do prefer a soft and cushioned shoe, which the Rocket X does happen to be. But it is also lightweight and stiff and designed for speed. So like a lot of other carbon plated racers, I found it pretty hard to go the actual speed I wanted to on recovery days because I always found myself picking up the pace more than I wanted to. So the Rocket X may not have a PIBA or a TPU based midsole like a lot of those other super shoes out there, but Hoka managed to make EVA light and bouncy, and I really appreciate that. So Hoka does have a couple of other carbon plated racers, but I prefer the Rocket X because I just found it to be more lively than the other one. So I wouldn't say there was anything that I strongly disliked about the Rocket X, and I really enjoyed using it for most types of runs, even though it is a racer. So talking a bit about the price, the shoe comes in at $180. So with most carbon plated racers being $200 or above, I think that this actually comes in at a pretty good deal, but it is also the exact same price as one of Hoka's other carbon plated shoes, the Carbon X2, which does technically have a higher stack height than this shoe. But I think that this shoe was supposed to cost $200 when it first came out, so I'm glad they decided to keep it under $200, but I think if this was $160, that just would have knocked it out of the park. So looking at the results, I would say that there is enough green to go get it. If you love Hoka or you want a carbon plated racer that is sub $200, I think that the Rocket X will be liked by most people for most use cases. So have you tried the Rocket X? If so, how do you like it? And if not, do you plan to get it? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my review of the Carbon X2 and the Hoka Mach 4. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep on running.